Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
It was a Tuesday in October when my world tilted sideways. I remember because Tuesdays were always chaos in pediatrics post-weekend injuries, anxious parents, and kids who'd rather be anywhere but a hospital. I was rushing between rooms, my arms full of rainbow band-aids and juice boxes, when I literally crashed into her, Dr. Hope Martinez. 6 feet of controlled fury in surgical scrubs, carrying what looked like her 4th cup of coffee that morning. The collision sent papers flying, coffee splashing, and me stumbling backward into a supply cart. Professional. Real professional. Watch where you're... She started, then stopped. Her eyes, this incredible shade of brown that reminded me of dark chocolate, swept over me with the precision of someone who'd spent years cataloging human anatomy. "You're bleeding." I looked down. A small cut on my forearm from the cart's metal edge. Nothing dramatic, but she was already reaching for gauze from the scattered supplies. "I'm fine," I said, but she was already cleaning the wound with movements so gentle they contradicted everything about her sharp exterior. "You're Rachel," she said, not a question. "The pediatric nurse everyone talks about. And you're Dr. Martinez, the surgeon everyone's terrified of." Her lips twitched. Almost a smile. "Hope, and I prefer respected. Is there a difference?" This time she did smile, just a ghost of one, before the professional mask slipped back into place. "In surgery?" "No, that should have been it." A brief encounter, maybe a polite nod in the hallways. But life has a way of laughing at your expectations. Weeks later, I found myself sliding into the seat across from her in the hospital cafeteria. She was alone, as usual, methodically eating a salad while reviewing charts. I'd been watching her for days, trying to work up the courage for this moment. "You know," I said, stealing a fry from her untouched plate, "you surgeons are all the same. No lunch breaks, just rage and black coffee." She looked up, eyebrow raised. "Did you just steal my food?" "Technically, you weren't eating it. I was preventing waste. And diagnosing my dietary habits. Years of nursing school. We're trained to spot self-neglect." I grinned, hoping she couldn't see how nervous I was. "Plus, you look like you haven't slept since the Clinton administration." "Which Clinton?" "Either one." She actually laughed at that. A real laugh, not the polite chuckle people gave when they wanted to escape a conversation. It transformed her entire face, softening edges I thought were carved in stone. "You're different than I expected," she said, closing her chart. "Different? How?" Less ... She seemed to struggle for the word. Perky, bubbly, insufferably cheerful. I was going to say artificial, but those work too. I felt something twist in my chest. "You think I'm fake?" "I think you're performing. There's a difference." She leaned back, studying me with those impossibly perceptive eyes. "The question is whether it's for the kids, the parents, or yourself." Before I could answer, her pager buzzed. Emergency surgery. She was gone in seconds, leaving me alone with half her fries and a revelation I wasn't ready for. 3 days later, my world exploded. It started innocently enough. A 4-year-old named Emma came into the A, screaming and terrified after a playground accident. Nothing serious, just a cut that needed stitches, but she was inconsolable. Her mom looked ready to cry. The other kids in the waiting room were getting upset, and even the veteran nurses were at a loss. So I did what I always did. I sat on the floor next to Emma's chair and started singing. "Baby shark, do, 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 dat, 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 dat." Emma stopped crying. Then she started giggling. Then she was singing along, complete with hand gestures. By the time Hope arrived to stitch her up, the entire waiting room was doing the baby shark dance. I didn't know someone was recording. I didn't know Emma's mom would post it online with the caption, "This nurse saved our day." I definitely didn't. No, it would hit 5 million views in 48 hours. Suddenly, I was hashtag the Sunshine Nurse. The hospital's PR department was calling me every hour. Interview requests poured in. Someone made a meme of my face with the words, "The hero we need," floating above my head. It was my worst nightmare wrapped in my biggest dream, tied up with a bow I never asked for. I found myself crying in Supply Closet B on a Thursday night, 3 weeks into my unwanted fame. The mascara I'd started wearing for the cameras was smudged, my scrubs were wrinkled, and I felt like I was drowning in other people's expectations. The door opened. Hope stepped in, took one look at me, and shut it behind her. "You hate this," she said. Not a question. "I just wanted to be a nurse," I whispered, because speaking any louder would have shattered whatever was left of my composure. Not a meme, not a brand, just ... me. She moved closer, close enough that I could smell her subtle perfume mixing with the antiseptic that seemed to permanently cling to all of us. "Rachel," she said, and my name sounded different in her voice, softer, real. "I know what you're going to say. That I should be grateful for the opportunity, that I'm helping the hospital's image, that..." She kissed me, right there between the gauze and the gloves in a supply closet that smelled like industrial disinfectant and dreams deferred. Her lips were warm and sure, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like myself. I melted into her, my hands tangling in her dark hair, every rational thought dissolving into the simple truth that this was what I'd been searching for without even knowing it. Then reality crashed back in. "We can't," I gasped, pulling away. "Not here, not with everything that's happening." But the damage was done. The air between us was electric, charged with possibilities and complications in equal measure. "Rachel, I have to go." I fled, leaving her standing there surrounded by medical supplies and the lingering scent of my perfume. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of stolen glances, professional courtesy, and the kind of tension that made every interaction feel like walking through a minefield. Then came the late shift that changed everything. The A had finally emptied around midnight a minor. Miracle in a place that never truly slept. I was finishing my notes when Hope appeared in the doorway of the break room. "My office," she said. 5 minutes. It wasn't a request. I found her there, standing behind her desk with her back to me, staring out at the city lights beyond the window. She changed out of her surgical scrubs into the street clothes she wore for administrative meetings, dark jeans, and a blue button-down that made her eyes look like storms. "This is a terrible idea," she said without turning around. "Probably," I agreed, closing the door behind me. The lock clicked with a finality that should have scared me. She turned then, and the look in her eyes made my breath catch. Raw, hungry, completely at odds with her controlled exterior. I could lose my job. We both could. I know. I moved closer, drawn by a magnetic pull I couldn't have resisted if I'd wanted to. "Good thing I didn't ask for your medical opinion, doctor." Her composure cracked. In 3 steps, she crossed the room and backed me against the door, her hands bracing on either side of my head. This close, I could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, the faint scar along her jawline from some long-ago accident. "Last chance to run," she whispered. Instead, I reached up and slowly, deliberately began unbuttoning my scrub top. Her stethoscope was still around her neck when she kissed me again, more demanding this time, her hands finally abandoning their safe positions to explore the curve of my waist, the small of my back, the places that made me gasp and arch against. Her clothes hit the floor, my scrub top, her shirt, the professional barriers we'd been hiding behind. She lifted me onto her desk with a strength that shouldn't have surprised me, but did, scattering papers and case files that suddenly seemed Monumentally unimportant. Hope, I breathed, and she stilled for a moment, searching my face. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The desk creaked under our weight as she mapped every inch of exposed skin with her lips, her tongue, her incredibly talented hands. For once, for the first time in weeks, there were no pagers, no patients, no cameras or expectations. Just us, just this desperate heat that had been building between us since that first collision. She was gentle and fierce in equal measure, taking me apart and rebuilding me with touches that felt like worship and claiming all at once. When I cried out her name, she swallowed the sound with her mouth, holding me against her like I might disappear if she loosened her grip. Afterward, we lay tangled together on the narrow couch in the corner of her office, my head on her chest, listening to her heartbeat slow to a normal rhythm. What happens now? I whispered. Her arms tightened around me. I don't know. But morning would bring answers neither of us wanted. Janet from radiology saw me leave Hope's office at 5:47 a.m., my hair still messed up from sleep, wearing yesterday's wrinkled scrubs. By lunch, the rumor had circulated through every department in the hospital. The chief of staff called Hope in. At 3 p.m., I knew because I watched her walk into his office with the same expression she wore when delivering bad news to families. She emerged 30 minutes later, her face a carefully constructed mask of professional indifference. But I caught her eyes across the nurse's station, and I saw everything I needed to know. Unprofessional, reckless, fix it. That same day, while Hope was being dressed down by administration, I got a call that changed everything. A national healthcare company wanted me for an advertising campaign. Not just any campaign, a multi-million-dollar deal that would make me the face of compassionate nursing across America. Think about it, my suddenly acquired agent said over the phone. This could change your life, make you financially independent, give you a platform to really make a difference. But all I could think about was Hope's face when she touched me the night before, like I was something precious and fragile and worth protecting. Our worlds were splitting apart, and I didn't know how to stop it. The Today Show studio was smaller than I'd expected and 10 times more intimidating. Lights blazed from every angle, cameras tracked my movements like mechanical predators, and somewhere in the darkness beyond the set, millions of people were about to watch me perform being myself. So, Rachel, the host said, her smile as bright and artificial as the studio lighting, America has fallen in love with you. Tell us, what's next for the Sunshine Nurse? I gave the answers I'd rehearsed, talked about my passion for pediatric care, my hopes for healthcare reform, my gratitude for the support. All true, all safe, all completely hollow. And your personal life? She pressed, leaning forward with the predatory interest of someone who's smelled a story. Any special someone who's captured your heart? My throat went dry. This was the moment stick. To the script, protect my career, keep everyone happy, or my phone buzzed, a text, be you, not their hashtag. Hope something inside me snapped. Actually, I said, and my voice was steadier than I'd expected, I am seeing someone. The host's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Oh, tell us about him. Her, I corrected, and felt the studio's energy shift like air pressure before a storm. She's a surgeon. Brilliant, dedicated, completely hopeless at social media. She saves lives every day while I make videos that go viral, and she's taught me that being real is more important than being likable. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then the host recovered, her professional smile never wavering. How wonderful. And does this mystery woman have a name? She does, but no, you can't meet her. Some things are too important to share with the internet. I could practically hear the phones ringing in the producer's booth, the frantic typing of social media managers trying to figure out how to spin this. But for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The internet, predictably, lost its collective mind. 2 hours after my interview aired, I was sitting in the chief of staff's office, watching him pace behind his desk like a caged animal. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he demanded. "The board is having emergency meetings. The PR department is in crisis mode. We have reporters calling every 5 minutes asking about your relationship with Dr. Martinez." I didn't mention her name. You didn't have to. There are only 3 female surgeons on staff, and the other 2 are married to men. He stopped pacing, fixing me with a glare that could have melted steel. "This hospital depends on its reputation. We can't afford this kind of scandal." "What scandal?" 2 consenting adults in a relationship? 2 employees violating workplace conduct policies? The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. "Sir," I said carefully, "Dr. Martinez. And I haven't violated any policies. We've been professional in all our workplace interactions." "Professional?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Half the staff saw her leaving your apartment building this morning." My blood ran cold. Hope hadn't left my apartment that morning. She'd been at her own place, getting ready for an early surgery. Someone was lying or mistaken, or that's not true. Are you calling our employees liars? I'm saying there's been a misunderstanding. The door opened behind me. Hope walked in, still in her surgical scrubs, her face a mask of professional calm that didn't quite hide the storm brewing in her eyes. "Dr. Martinez," the chief said. "Perfect timing. We were just discussing your relationship with Miss Chen. What relationship would that be?" Hope's voice was ice cold, perfectly controlled. My heart stopped. "Hope, Miss Chen and I are colleagues," she continued, not looking at me. "We've had occasion to work together on pediatric cases. Nothing more." The chief looked between us, clearly sensing undercurrents he couldn't quite identify. "So you're saying the rumors are false?" "I'm saying I don't engage in relationships with subordinates. It's unprofessional. Subordinates." The word hit me like a physical blow. "Good," the chief said, his relief obvious. "Then this shouldn't be a problem going forward, Miss Chen. I trust you'll be more careful about your public statements in the future." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Couldn't look at Hope, who had just reduced everything between us to nothing with surgical precision. "Rachel?" the chief prompted. "Yes," I managed. "Of course." "Excellent. Dr. Martinez, you're dismissed." "Ms. Chen, we need to discuss the terms of your contract renewal." Hope left without a word, without a glance back. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of the world. I found her in the parking garage 2 hours later, sitting in her car with her head in her hands. She looked up when I knocked on the window, and for a moment, her careful mask slipped enough for me to see the devastation underneath. "Get in," she said. I slid into the passenger seat, and we sat in silence for what felt like eternity. Finally, she spoke. "I had to." "Did you?" "You know I did." She turned to face me, and her eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion. They were going to fire us both, destroy our careers. "For what?" "For love," I said simply. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "Love?" "Rachel, we've known each other for 3 months. We've been together, really together, for less than a week. And that's not enough to throw away everything we've worked for. It's enough for me. It's not enough." The words exploded out of her, raw and desperate. "You're 28 years old. You have your whole career ahead of you. I'm 36, divorced, carrying student loans that won't be paid off until I'm 50. I won't let you sacrifice your future for something that might not even last. You don't get to decide what I sacrifice. Someone has to be the adult here. The adult. Or the coward." She went perfectly still, her knuckles white. Where she gripped the steering wheel, "Get out of my car," she said quietly. "Hope, get out." So I did. I watched her drive away, taillights disappearing into the gray buffalo evening, taking what was left of my heart with her. The next few weeks passed in a haze of professional smiles and personal misery. The hospital's publicity machine went into overdrive, spinning my television appearance as a triumph of authenticity over artifice. Donations poured in from LGBTQ advocacy groups who saw me as a role model. My agent fielded offers for speaking engagements, book deals, movie rights. And through it all, hope was a ghost. We moved through the same hallways, worked in the same building, but she might as well have been on another planet. When our paths crossed, she was politely professional. Nothing more. Dr. Martinez. Never hope. I threw myself into work, spending extra hours in pediatrics, volunteering for every difficult case, every challenging family. If I couldn't have love, at least I could have purpose. That's how I met Marcus. 7 years old, admitted for complications from leukemia. He'd been fighting the disease for 2 years, and the battle was wearing on him. His parents looked haggard, his siblings scared. The entire family was holding their breath, waiting for either a miracle or an ending. Marcus liked to draw. Crayon masterpieces of superheroes and dragons, always with a little boy who looked suspiciously like him saving the day. His latest creation was taped to the wall next to his bed, a picture of himself flying through the sky, cape streaming behind him. "That's me when I'm better," he told me, his voice matter-of-fact despite the feeding tube taped to his nose. "I'm going to fly around the world and help other sick kids." "That sounds like an important job," I said, adjusting his blankets. "Will you help me?" "Of course. Promise?" I looked into his eyes-old eyes in a young face, eyes that had seen too much pain for someone so small, and felt something shift inside me. "I promise." It was a promise that would change everything. Marcus needed a bone marrow transplant. The donor was his older sister, Emma, who was barely 10, but insisted she wasn't scared, that she wanted to help her little brother fly again. Hope was the lead surgeon. I wasn't supposed to be in the OR pediatric. Nurses typically stayed in recovery, but Marcus had asked for me, and his parents had requested I be there. Hope couldn't refuse without looking petty. So there I was, gowned and masked, watching her work with the precision and grace that had first caught my attention months ago. Her hands moved with absolute certainty, every cut and suture perfect. She was saving my patient's life, and I'd never wanted her more. The surgery went flawlessly. Marcus's new bone marrow took hold exactly as hoped. Within weeks, his color improved, his energy returned. He started drawing again new pictures of himself flying, but now he included a nurse with dark hair standing beside him on the ground, cheering him on. "That's you," he told me, pointing to the figure. "You're going to help me help other kids, remember?" I remembered. The day of Marcus's discharge, I made a decision that had been building in my chest for weeks. I turned in my notice on a Tuesday morning, exactly 6 months after that first collision in the hallway. The chief of staff looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "You're quitting? Now, when your career is finally taking off." "I'm not quitting nursing," I said. "I'm quitting performing. The board has approved your contract extension. We're prepared to offer you a significant raise, your own department eventually. I don't want a department. I want to make a difference." "You're making a difference. You're the most visible nurse in the country. Visible isn't the same as effective." I thought about Marcus, about all the kids like him who needed more than viral videos and photo opportunities. They needed real change, real advocacy, real resources. "I'm starting a nonprofit," I continued, "for pediatric cancer patients and their families. Fundraising, advocacy, support services." "You could do that here, through the hospital?" "No. I couldn't. Not the way it needs to be done." He studied me for a long moment, probably calculating the publicity nightmare my departure would cause. This is about Dr. Martinez, isn't it? The question caught me off guard. No, it's about me, about who I want to be. And for the first time in months, that was completely true. I called it Marcus's Flight Foundation. The mission was simple: provide comprehensive support for pediatric cancer patients and their families from diagnosis through recovery. No cameras, no social media campaigns, no viral moments. Just real help for real families facing the hardest fight of their lives. The first donation came from Marcus himself, a mason jar full of quarters he'd been saving for a new video game. The second came from his parents, who mortgaged their house to contribute. Within a month, word had spread through the pediatric cancer community, and donations started pouring in from families who understood the mission in their bones. I rented a small office space downtown, hired a part-time assistant, and threw myself into the work. Grant applications, fundraising events, family visits. It was everything the hospital hadn't let me be. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. There was only one thing missing. I saw Hope at Elmwood Park on a Saturday morning in May, almost a year after everything fell apart. She was sitting on a bench near the playground, watching a golden retriever chase squirrels while his owner chatted on a phone nearby. My heart stopped, then started again with a painful lurch. She looked different, softer, somehow. Her dark hair was longer than she'd worn it at the hospital, and she was dressed in jeans and a casual sweater instead of scrubs or a business suit. She looked younger, more relaxed. She looked happy. I almost walked away. Should have walked away. But then she looked up and saw me, and the careful expression of contentment on her face shifted into something more complex. Rachel, Hope. I moved closer, drawn by the same magnetic pull that had gotten me in trouble a year ago. How are you? Good, better. She gestured to the empty space beside her on the bench. Sit. I sat, maintaining careful distance between. U.S. The air was warm with the promise of summer, and the park was full of families enjoying the weather. Normal people living normal lives, unmarked by the drama we'd created. I heard about the foundation, she said after a moment. It's impressive, thank you. Marcus is doing well. I've been following his case. He is. He starts 4th grade in the fall. And you? Are you happy? The question was quiet, careful, like she was afraid of the answer. Mostly, I said honestly, the work is good, important. I feel like I'm finally doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But I looked at her, at the woman who'd turned my world upside down with a single kiss, who'd broken my heart to save my career, who'd been haunting my dreams for months. It was the surgeon I used to know, I said. Brilliant, dedicated, terrible at expressing emotions. I've been wondering how she's doing. Hope's lips curved in the ghost of a smile. She's been better. She left the hospital. What? I turned to face her fully, shocked. When? Why? 3 months ago? Turns out that after you left, work wasn't quite as satisfying as it used to be. Hope, I opened a clinic, she continued. Low-income families, uninsured patients. It's smaller than what I used to do, but it's real, like what you're doing. We sat in silence, watching the golden retriever finally catch up to a squirrel, only to look confused about what to do. Next. I was wrong, Hope said suddenly, about us, about what we could be. My breath caught. Hope, I was scared. Terrified, actually. I'd never felt anything like what I felt for you, and it made me stupid, cowardly. She turned to face me, and I saw everything I'd remembered and more in her dark eyes. I thought I was protecting us by ending it. Instead, I just made us both miserable. You hurt me, I said quietly. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. I understand why you did it. I even agree with some of your reasoning. But you made that decision for both of us without talking to me, without trusting me to make my own choices. You're right. I needed you to fight for us, and instead you threw us away. You're right about that too. I studied her face, looking for the careful mask she'd always worn, the professional distance that had defined her. It was gone, replaced by something raw and honest and utterly vulnerable. What are you asking me, Hope? I'm asking if you think we could try again, differently this time, as equals, as partners, as two people who figured out who they want to be. My heart was racing, hope and fear warring in my chest. And if it doesn't work out, if we crash and burn, then at least we'll have tried, at least we'll know. The golden retriever had given up on squirrels and was now investigating a family having a picnic nearby, his tail wagging hopefully. His owner was calling him, but he was too distracted by the possibility of drop sandwiches to listen. I'm not the same person I was a year ago, I said. Neither am I. I won't perform for you. I won't be anyone other than who I am. I don't want you to be anyone else. I won't give up my work for you. I wouldn't ask you to. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman I'd fallen in love with beneath the surgeon's mask, the professional distance, the fear that had driven us apart. She was still there, but she was also something new, something braver. Okay, I said. Okay, let's try again. The smile that spread across her face was worth every moment of heartbreak, every night of wondering what might have been. There's something else, she said, reaching into her jacket pocket. Hope, we just agreed to try dating again. If you're about to propose, it's not a ring, she laughed, pulling out a folded piece of paper. It's a business proposal. I took the paper, unfolded it, and stared. It was a grant application, a joint proposal between Marcus's Flight Foundation and something called the Martinez Free Clinic for Collaborative Programming. You want to work together? I want to build something with you, something that matters, something that's ours. I read through the proposal, my excitement building with every line. It was brilliant, combining my foundation's family support services with her clinic's medical care, creating a comprehensive program for underserved pediatric patients. This could actually work, I said. It could change everything. I looked up at her, at this impossible woman who'd collided with me in a hospital hallway, and turned my entire world upside down. Are you sure about this? All of it? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The golden retriever had successfully charmed a sandwich off the picnic family and was now trotting back to his owner with his prize, tail wagging triumphantly. Sometimes persistence paid off. Then let's change everything, I said. We spent the rest of that afternoon walking through the park, talking through the details of our joint proposal, carefully rebuilding the trust we'd shattered. It felt different this time, steadier, more real. We were different people than we'd been a year ago, shaped by loss and growth in equal measure. When Hope walked me to my car as the sun was setting, I felt the same electric pull that had gotten us into trouble before. But this time, instead of running from it or rushing into it, we both just acknowledged it. Can I kiss you? She asked, her voice soft in the gathering twilight. In a public parking lot? We're not at the hospital anymore. No, I said, stepping closer. We're not. She kissed me like she was claiming something precious she'd lost and found again. Like she was making a promise. Like she was finally brave enough to fight for what she wanted. When we broke apart, breathless and a little dizzy, I laughed. What? She asked. I was just thinking about that first day. When we crashed into each other. You mean when you weren't watching where you were going? When you were carrying too much coffee and moving too fast? Are we going to argue about this for the next 50 years? The words hung between us. Casual, but loaded with possibility. Maybe, I said. If we're lucky. 1 year later, Marcus was in remission and had grown 4 inches. Our joint foundation was thriving, serving over 200 families across Western New York, and I was standing in the same park where Hope and I had found our way back to each other, watching her pace nervously in front of the bench where we'd made our fresh start. "You're making me dizzy," I said. "Sorry." She stopped pacing, ran a hand through her hair, and took a deep breath. "Rachel, Hope, we've been together for a year now, working together, building something incredible together. We have, and I love you. More than I thought I could love anyone." My heart started racing. "I love you too." "Good, that's good." She reached into her jacket pocket and my breath caught. Hope ... pull quotes. "I know we said we'd take things slow. I know we're both different people than we were before, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life colliding with you." She dropped to one knee right there in the park, in front of dog walkers and joggers and families having evening picnics. The golden retriever from a year ago, I swear it was the same one, started barking with excitement. "Marry me," she said, holding up a simple white gold band with a small, perfect diamond. Before I lose my nerve and start following protocol. For once, I was crying, laughing and crying and probably making a scene, but I didn't care. "Yes," I said, because there wasn't any other possible answer. "Yes, obviously yes." The ring fit perfectly. The kiss that followed was photographed by at least 3 people and posted to social media within minutes. By morning, #SunshineNurseEngaged was trending, and reporters were calling both our offices for comment. But for once, I didn't care about the attention. Let them take pictures. Let them write their stories. This time, I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted. "So," Hope said as we walked back to her car, fingers intertwined, "any thoughts on a wedding venue?" "Somewhere small," I said immediately. "Private. Just family and friends. The hospital chapel." I stopped walking. "Are you serious? Too weird?" I thought about the place where we'd first met, where we'd fallen in love, where we'd nearly lost each other. About all the life and death and healing that happened within those walls. "Actually," I said, "it's perfect." We got married on a Saturday in October, exactly 2 years after our first collision. The hospital chapel was decorated with white flowers and filled with 30 of our closest friends and family members. Marcus was our ring bearer, proudly carrying the rings in a small wooden box he'd made himself in art therapy. My mother cried through the entire ceremony. Hope's parents, who'd driven up from New York City, looked politely bewildered but genuinely happy. Our colleagues from both the hospital and the foundation sat in the front rows, grinning like they'd orchestrated the whole thing. "You know," Hope said during our first dance, swaying to music that was probably too slow for the occasion, "this isn't how I imagined my life would go. Better or worse, infinitely better, even the scary parts. Especially the scary parts." She spun me out and pulled me back in, and for a moment I was dizzy with the simple perfection of it all. "I have something for you," she whispered in my ear as the song ended. We already exchanged rings. "Something else." She led me to the small table where we displayed our wedding photos, pictures of us at work, at the foundation, with Marcus and other families we helped. But there was something new there. A small framed document I hadn't seen before. It was a certificate of incorporation for something called Real Healthcare Heroes Foundation. "Hope, what is this?" "Our next project," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Remember what you said during that interview? About real healthcare workers, no filters, no fame. I thought maybe it was time to make that a reality." I stared at the document, reading through the mission statement. Supporting healthcare workers in underserved communities, providing grants for innovative programs, advocating for policy changes. It was everything I dreamed about during those long nights when I'd felt trapped by my unwanted fame. We'd run it together, equal partners, and everything. You realize this means we'll be working together even more than we already do. I'm counting on it. I kissed her then, right there in front of our wedding guests, because I couldn't wait another second. Someone cheered, probably Marcus, and camera flashes went off, but I didn't care. Let them document this moment. Let the world see what real love looked like. We honeymooned in Costa Rica, 2 weeks of no phones, no work, no responsibilities except deciding whether to have breakfast on the beach or by the pool. It was the first real vacation either of us had taken in years, and it took 3 days before. We stopped automatically reaching for our phones every few minutes. I feel guilty, Hope admitted on our 4th day, as we lay in hammocks strung between palm trees. About what? About not checking on the clinic. About not returning emails about the foundation. The clinic is fine. Dr. Reyes has everything under control, and Sarah is handling the foundation emails. But what if I reached over and took her hand, stopping the spiral of worry before it could really get going? What if we trust the people we hired to do their jobs? That's terrifying, I know, but maybe that's the point. She was quiet for a long moment, listening to the sound of waves and distant laughter from other hotel guests. You know what's weird? She said finally. What? I'm happy. Like, genuinely, completely happy. I don't think I felt like this since ever. Not even during your surgical residency. When you were saving lives and being brilliant, that was different. That was achievement, accomplishment. This is. She turned to look at me, her hair messy from the ocean breeze, her skin already golden from the sun. This is peace. Good, I said, settling deeper into my hammock. You deserve peace. So do you. We spent the rest of the afternoon like that, dozing and talking and watching the sun track across the sky. That evening, we had dinner at a small restaurant on the beach, sharing Savatian drinks that came with tiny umbrellas. Hope tried to pay the check in broken Spanish, which was both endearing and completely unnecessary since the server spoke perfect English. I have a confession, she said as we walked back to our hotel along the shoreline. Oh no, what did you do? I may have brought some reading material. I stopped walking. Hope Martinez. Did you bring work on our honeymoon? Not work. Research. For the new foundation. That's work. It's planning. Same thing. She looked so guilty that I couldn't stay mad, even if I'd wanted to. Show me, I said. She pulled a manila folder from her beach bag. How had I not noticed that? And spread the contents on a nearby picnic table. Articles about healthcare worker burnout, statistics on rural clinic closures, policy papers on medical funding. I've been thinking, she said, her excitement building as she talked, about what we could really accomplish. Not just supporting individual programs, but changing systems. Advocacy, lobbying, maybe even running candidates who understand healthcare from the ground up. I looked at the research she'd compiled, the notes she'd made in the margins, the vision that was clearly taking shape in her mind. You want to change the world. I want to try. It's a big job. Good thing I have help. I kissed her forehead, tasting salt and sunscreen, and the promise of everything we could build together. Show me your plan. We spent the next 2 hours on that beach, mapping out the future by moonlight, dreaming bigger than either of us had ever dared to dream alone. Coming home from honeymoon was like diving into cold water, a shock to the system that took days to adjust to. The clinic had run smoothly in Hope's absence, but she still spent her first day back reviewing every case, every decision, every prescription. The foundation office was similarly well maintained, but I found myself double-checking grant applications and family intakes that had been handled perfectly well without me. We're terrible at delegating, I told Hope over dinner. Our first night back. Speak for yourself. I delegate plenty. Reviewing every decision your staff makes isn't delegating. It's quality control. It's control. She paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. Point taken. The next morning, I made a conscious effort to trust my staff. Sarah had handled 3 new family intakes while I was gone, and her notes were thorough and compassionate. David had processed 2 grant applications and scheduled follow-up visits with families we'd been supporting for months. Everything was running exactly as it should. It was terrifying and liberating and equal. Measure, how did it go? Hope asked when I stopped by the clinic for lunch. I didn't micromanage anyone for 4 whole hours. That's progress. How about you? I let Dr. Reyes handle a complicated case without hovering over his shoulder. Look at us, being functional. Adults, don't get carried away. But we were learning. Slowly, imperfectly, but learning nonetheless. 6 months later, Real Healthcare Heroes Foundation was officially launched with a gala that packed the ballroom of Buffalo's nicest hotel. We'd invited healthcare workers from across the region, along with donors, politicians, and media representatives who'd followed our story from the beginning. I stood at the podium, looking out at faces I recognized, nurses who'd become friends, doctors who'd supported our work, families whose children we'd helped through Marcus's flight foundation. In the front row, Marcus himself sat with his parents, wearing a tiny tuxedo and grinning broadly. His latest blood work showed no sign of cancer, and his dreams had evolved from flying around the world to becoming a doctor himself. 2 years ago, I began. I was a pediatric nurse who accidentally became internet famous for singing Baby Shark to a scared little boy. I thought that was the most embarrassing thing that could happen to me. Laughter rippled through the audience. I was wrong. The most embarrassing thing was almost letting fear and other people's expectations keep me from fighting for what mattered. Most, I looked at Hope, stunning in a black dress that made her eyes look like stars, and felt the same electricity that had sparked between us from that very first collision. Real Healthcare Heroes isn't about fame or viral videos or hashtags. It's about recognizing that the people who show up every day to heal and comfort and care for others deserve more than just our gratitude. They deserve our investment, our advocacy, our commitment to making their jobs sustainable and meaningful. The applause was warm and sustained. When it died down, I continued. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that we've awarded our first round of grants, $2.3 million to 27 programs across New York State, rural clinics that can now hire additional staff, hospital systems that can implement mental health support for their workers, research programs focused on reducing healthcare worker burnout. More applause, louder this time. But this is just the beginning, because the truth is, healthcare in America is broken, and it won't be fixed by politicians or insurance companies or hospital administrators. It'll be fixed by the people in this room, the people who choose healing as their life's work, who show up in the darkness and the chaos and the fear because they know that someone has to. I paused, looking out at faces that had become part of my extended family over the past months. So tonight, we're not just celebrating what we've accomplished. We're committing to what comes next: policy advocacy, systemic change, a future where no nurse has to choose between paying student loans and having a life outside work, where no doctor has to see 30 patients in a day because there's no one else available, where healing is valued as much as profit. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. When it finally ended, Hope joined me at the podium. "I'm not much of a public speaker," she said, which earned her a few chuckles from people who knew her reputation for directness. "But I wanted to share something personal tonight. She turned to look at me, and I saw everything we'd been through reflected in her eyes. 3 years ago, I thought I knew what success looked like. Long hours, difficult cases, a reputation, FO or excellence. I was good at my job, but I wasn't particularly happy. I definitely wasn't fulfilled. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Then this woman, she gestured to me, crashed into my life. Literally. Spilled my coffee, scattered my papers, and turned everything I thought I knew about myself upside down. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. She taught me that being excellent isn't enough, that saving lives one at a time isn't enough when the system itself is sick. She taught me to think bigger, dream bigger, fight for bigger changes. Hope's voice was steady, but I could see the emotion she was holding back. Real healthcare heroes exist because Rachel refused to accept that things had to stay the way they were, because she looked at what was broken and decided to fix it. Even when that meant giving up everything that was safe and comfortable, she turned back to the audience. That's what real heroes do. They don't wait for permission or perfect circumstances. They see what needs to be done and they do it. Every person in this room is a real hero. And together, we're going to change everything. The applause this time was different, not just appreciation, but commitment, energy, the sound of people, ready to fight. Later, after the last guest had left and we were finally alone in our hotel room, I collapsed onto the bed, still wearing my gala dress. That was incredible, I said. It was terrifying. You were perfect. I was winging it. The best kind of perfect. Hope kicked off her heels and joined me on the bed, both of us too wired to sleep despite the late hour. Do you think we can actually do it? She asked. Change everything? I think we can try, and I think trying is enough to start with. She was quiet for a moment, tracing patterns on the bedspread. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, she admitted. For something to go wrong, for this to all fall apart. Hey, I turned to face her fully. Look at me. She did, and I saw the vulnerability she rarely let anyone else see. We've already survived the worst case scenario. We lost each other. Remember, we made it through that. Everything else is manageable. Promise? I promise that whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's what partners do. She smiled then, the real smile I'd fallen in love with, the one that made her whole face light up. Partners in everything? Everything. Hope's first day in the state assembly was a media circus. Reporters wanted to interview the viral nurses, surgeon wife who had parlayed internet fame into political success. She hated every minute of it. This isn't what I signed up for, she complained over dinner at our Albany hotel. Actually, it's exactly what you signed up for. You ran for public office. This comes with the territory. I want to work on legislation, not pose for photo ops, then do both. Use the attention to draw focus to the issues that matter. Is that what you did? When you were famous? I thought about those months when I'd been hashtag the sunshine nurse, how trapped I'd felt by other people's expectations. No, I admitted. I ran from it, but you're stronger than I was then. Am I? You're here, aren't you? Fighting for what you believe in instead of hiding from it? She nodded slowly. I guess I am. Hope's first committee assignment was health, which surprised no one. Her first bill, introduced just 3 weeks into her term, was the Healthcare Worker Protection Act, comprehensive legislation addressing workplace violence, mandatory staffing ratios, and mental health support for healthcare employees. It was ambitious, it was necessary, and it faced immediate opposition from hospital lobbying groups who argued it would be too expensive to implement. Let me get this straight, Hope said during a committee hearing that was broadcast live on the legislative channel. You're saying it's too expensive to protect the people who are literally keeping your patients alive? The lobbyist, a man in an expensive suit who clearly hadn't expected such direct pushback, stammered something about budget constraints and operational challenges. I've been a surgeon for 12 years, Hope continued. I've worked in hospitals that were understaffed, undersupported, and underfunded. I've seen nurses work double shifts because there was no one else available. I've seen doctors break down in supply closets because they couldn't save another patient with inadequate resources. So when you tell me this legislation is too expensive, what I hear is that you think healthcare workers' lives and well-being are negotiable. The clip went viral. Hashtag Healthcare Worker Protection Act started trending on social media. Nurses and doctors from across the state started calling their representatives, sharing their own stories of workplace violence and burnout. Within 2 months, the bill had enough co-sponsors to guarantee passage. You're getting the hang of this politics thing, I told Hope after watching her demolish another industry lobbyist in committee. I'm getting the hang of fighting for what's right. Politics is just the arena where it's happening. Dr. Elena Martinez-Shen was born on a Tuesday in October, exactly 4 years after our first collision in the hospital hallway. She arrived 3 weeks early in typical Martinez fashion, impatient and determined to make her entrance on her own terms. Hope was in the middle of a committee hearing when my water broke. I'd been sitting in the gallery watching her grill yet another insurance executive about prior authorization requirements, when I felt the unmistakable gush of fluid and the first sharp contraction. "Excuse me," I whispered to the security guard. "I need to get a message to Assemblywoman Martinez. I'm in labor." The next few minutes were chaos. The security guard whispered to an aide, who frantically scribbled a note and passed it to Hope. During a brief recess, I watched her face go white as she read it, then saw her lean over to the committee chair. "I need to recess this hearing," she announced to the room. "My wife is having our baby." The committee room erupted in applause and laughter. Someone shouted, "Go, Assemblywoman." The insurance executive looked deeply confused. 6 hours later, Elena made her debut. 7 pounds, 2 ounces of perfect possibility. Hope cried when the doctor placed her in her arms, tears streaming down her face as she counted tiny fingers and toes. "She's beautiful," she whispered. "She looks like you," I said, exhausted but euphoric. "She looks like us." Elena is 3 now, and she spends her days between Hope's Albany office and our foundation headquarters in Buffalo. She knows the names of all the legislative aides, can identify senators by sight, and has strong opinions about which snacks should be served at campaign events. Marcus, now 15 and cancer-free, volunteers at the foundation after school. He's designing our new website and has started a peer support program for other teenage cancer survivors. His latest drawing hangs in our office, 2 women and superhero. Cape standing in front of a hospital with a little girl between them reaching for the sky. The Healthcare Worker Protection Act passed in New York and has been adopted by 12 other states. Our political network has helped elect 43 healthcare workers to various offices across the country. The foundation now serves over 2,000 families annually. Hope won re-election by the largest margin in district history and is being courted by the state party to run for Congress. She hasn't decided yet. She wants to finish the work she started in Albany first. Besides, she told the party leaders who came to pitch her on a federal campaign, "My wife might kill me if I drag our family to Washington." Actually, I'd interrupted. "I think we should talk about it." "Really? Really?" Elena's young enough. That moving wouldn't disrupt her too much. And think about what we could accomplish with federal resources. "You want to move to Washington?" "I want to keep building the life we've created together, wherever that leads us." That was 3 months ago. Hope's decision is due next week, and I know she's been wrestling with it. More responsibility, more scrutiny, more time away from home, but also more power to create the changes we've been fighting for. Tonight, as I'm putting Elena to bed, she asked the question I've been expecting. Mama, why do people take pictures when you and Mommy go places? Because Mommy has an important job and people are interested in our family. Why? The eternal toddler question. I think about how to explain viral fame and political careers and the strange intersection of personal and public life to a 3-year-old. Because sometimes when people love each other very much and work together to help other people, it makes a good story. And people like good stories. Are we a good story? The best story. She considers this seriously as she considers everything. Will you tell me our story? Which part? The beginning. When you and Mommy crashed. So I tell her about the collision in the hospital hallway, about spilled coffee and scattered papers, and the moment I first looked into her Mommy's eyes. I tell her about the supply closet kiss and the late night conversations and all the ways we found each other and lost each other and found each other again. I tell her about Marcus and his drawings, about the foundation and the campaigns and the laws that changed because people believed in something better. I tell her about the wedding in the hospital chapel and the honeymoon in Costa Rica and the night she decided to join us 3 weeks early. And then what happened? She asks, even though she knows the ending. And then we all lived happily ever after. Even when Mommy has to work late, especially then, because that's when we're fighting to make the world better for kids like you. Will I fight too when I'm big? Only if you want to. But I think you will, because fighting for what's right is what Martinez Chuns do. She yawns, satisfied with this answer. As I'm tucking her in, Hope appears in the doorway, still in her work clothes, but with her sleeves rolled up and her hair escaping from its professional twist. How did committee go? I ask as we walk down the hallway together. The education. Budget passed. Full funding for school nurses in rural districts. That's huge. It's a start. She pauses outside our bedroom door. Rachel, I've been thinking about the congressional race, and I want to do it. But only if you're sure you're ready for what comes next. I think about the woman who ran crying to a supply closet when her viral video made her famous. About the scared nurse who thought visibility was the enemy of authenticity. About all the ways I've grown and changed and learned to use whatever platform I have to fight for things that matter. I'm ready, I tell her, but I have one condition. What's that? Win or lose, we take Elena to Disneyland after the election. Just the 3 of us, no phones, no work, no interviews about work life. Balance. Deal. And when we get back, we start trying for baby number 2. Hope's eyes widen. Seriously? Elena needs a sibling. And the world needs more Martinez Chun kids causing trouble for injustice. She kisses me then, right there in our hallway, surrounded by Alana's artwork and family photos, and all the beautiful, chaotic evidence of the life we've built together. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? She asks when we break apart. Not since this morning. I love you. More than I thought it was possible to love anyone. Good, I say, pulling her toward our bedroom. Because tomorrow we're announcing your congressional campaign, and I need to know my co-campaign manager is fully committed to the cause. Co-campaign manager? You don't think you're doing this without me, do you? She grins, the same grin that made me fall for her in that hospital cafeteria all those years ago. Wouldn't dream of it. People always ask me what the secret is. How do you maintain a relationship when you're both so driven, so committed to changing the world? How do you raise a family in the public eye? How do you keep loving each other when the pressure could break anyone? The truth is, there's no secret. There's just choice. Every day, we choose each other. We choose to build something together rather than compete. We choose to fight for our values while protecting our family. We choose to believe that love and ambition aren't mutually exclusive, It's not always easy. There are late nights and missed dinners and campaign events that drag on too long. There are moments of doubt and exhaustion, and the simple human desire to quit and run away to somewhere quiet and normal. But then Elena will draw us a picture of our family saving the world, or Hope will get a letter from a nurse whose life was changed by legislation we fought for, or I'll meet a family whose child is alive because of resources our foundation provided. And we remember why we do this work, why we choose the harder path, why love is always worth fighting for. Some love stories end with a wedding. Others end with a baby or a house or the promise of forever. Ours doesn't end at all. It just keeps expanding, collision after collision, year after year, building something bigger than either of us could have imagined alone. Hope Martinez Chen will probably win her congressional race next month. Our foundation will keep growing. Elena will keep asking impossible questions and drawing pictures of the future she wants to help create. And somewhere in Buffalo, a new generation of healthcare workers will fall in love and fight injustice and crash into each other in the best possible ways. Because that's what love stories really are, not endings, but beginnings. Not destinations, but journeys. Not perfection, but the beautiful, messy, complicated work of choosing each other over and over again until choosing becomes as natural as breathing. My name is Rachel Martinez Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that the best collisions are the ones that change everything. How I discovered that love isn't something that happens to you, it's something you build, fight for, and choose every single day. And honestly, we're just getting started.